Welcome to Conversations. I'm Kit Cassingham with Live in Focused Energy. I'm a longevity coach, and I aspire to inspire people to make the most of their lives now, every day, so that the years that they have are vibrant and full. I like to say I transform the fear of aging. And tell us who you are, Miss Edith.
I'm Edith Johnston, and as a reference point, I've been a rehabilitation counselor over the years, and I am very gladly now retired. But joining in conversations, helping people find and discover and move forward with their lives is always a lifelong passion with me. So I'm excited to be able to join Kit today again and have our conversation.
Excellent. And today's topic is cycles of life, which is a real convoluted, convoluted is not quite the right word, but we're going to go in circles and have a lot of fun with this. When Edith and I were doing our planning session, we talked about where are there cycles of life? We humans have them. And we realize nature has them, science has them, and I'll be curious to see what other cycles people think of and put in the comments. And I think we should define what we mean by cycle or cycles. I immediately come up with periods of life or phases. What comes to your mind, Edith?
Well, you mentioned one of them, of course, and that is phases of nature, but it also has to do, so this means that things progress and they go through periods, whether how short a time or how long a time, periods of returning to a similar type of dynamic that's going on. And so with the humans, it's humans in general. Each human goes through the different cycles. Nature goes through the 4 seasons. The moon goes through its monthly cycle and monthly phases as well. And the earthly phases, otherwise the seasonal phases, are relative to the sun. So we have those. I
love that. Yeah.
And we have the natural ones also of ebb and flow, of whether it be tides, whether it be economics, whether it be friendships, whether it be seeing how growth goes through economically or socially throughout our lives in different countries around us.
I like that. Yeah, you've touched on a lot of interesting and important phases or cycles. And of course, I, as a longevity coach, I also think of the cycle that babies start off being fed by their parents or by others and in diapers, and they learn how to feed themselves and they get out of diapers. And the older we get, we may get back into a phase where others are feeding us and we're in diapers and all the cycles in between. And I will aspire to help people avoid the diapers and being fed later on, but it's a nice thing to be able to do. My last meal with my dad was me cleaning up. I mean, he fed himself, but it had food all over him, and I was touched by being able to gently and lovingly clean him up so we could leave the restaurant. It's an interesting cycle for me to be in.
Well, when you're talking about that kind of a cycle, it's we not only have our personal cycle, but in that personal cycle, and as you said, cycles through life, is that we are cared for, we take care of ourselves, and then we take care of others. So it's a generational thing, so that we do take care of the elders at times, and then the elders have taken care of us.
Right, yeah. And in the studying I do with the Modern Elder Academy, I'm reminded of the cycles of our life, that we have our adolescent age and activities. And we celebrate moving from that to middlescence. So we move from learning to collecting. We are aspiring in our middlescence age cycle. We're aspiring to grow our careers, grow our income, gather our belongings, and create families of some sort or another. And those are interesting cycles. And sometimes we celebrate that as we move into elderhood. I don't know if there's such a thing as elderescence, but I'll say there is, because I like the word. And we need, I think, more celebration along the way to help make the cycles more distinctive. And why else do I think? I think we need to celebrate more of our wins and successes and our changes to help anchor them so that we remember that they happened and acknowledge that they happened.
And I would add that celebrating steps in our life, our accomplishments, our ability to manage things, start new, learn things are important because it also solidifies our self-worth, our self-perception of our self-worth. And then we're acknowledging that we are growing and learning and experiencing new things. Many a times in our midlife, or that time between adolescence and elderescence, is that we don't celebrate and acknowledge that there is a positive change, progress, a dynamic where we are learning and growing. And so we get frustrated and disappointed with ourselves. And that leads us to not having the joy and the deliberateness or the exuberance of all of our experiences.
Well, and you said a little earlier too that we may not see our lives and ourselves with the same, we may not recognize our value. I forget exactly what you said. And celebrations are also a way of others acknowledging what we have contributed so that they can honor us and we can honor us. I think those are important.
Yeah, and I think part of the reasons for some of the celebrations that are concrete is that honoring of our accomplishments and having others recognize us and recognize that accomplishment. Yeah. And we have to remember that even little steps, it's okay to give ourselves a high five. It's an okay to say, yes, I did it. It wasn't a big deal. Somebody else may not have noticed it, but it may have been something that we had some resistance for, or we had some doubt about, or we had set as a goal, and we did it. And we did it. So celebrations there are also very important.
And I think that when we don't celebrate even those little wins, little progresses, after a while, we feel like we're on a treadmill and we do lose the joy. We may even forget what the goal is, what the purpose of our work is. Yeah, it's a good cycle to have, celebrating.
Yes, celebrating and acknowledging it. You know, some of the other things, Kit, you were talking about as far as the cycles through life, I think we need to recognize even on a smaller scale, and that's that our daily routines. What's our cycle for our daily routines? And the one reasons I bring this up is because of my history of working with those with various changes in their life, whether it be a disability, whether it be an emotional thing, a loss or whatever. And it's a matter of recognizing then how are we managing or how are we engaging with our energy and with our activities on a daily life. And so looking at those cycles, those patterns, even on a daily basis, can allow us to be more engaging by managing how we engage in activities, for what time periods, so that we can pace ourselves, so that we have a consistent flow of energy, so that we can do more things on more days, versus feeling like if there's a chronic illness situation that you ran out of energy because you pushed yourself for 3.5 hours, where if you had done an hour, hour and a half, and taken a 15-minute to a 30-minute break, you could have easily done another hour and a half and been ready to repeat the next day, versus being down for 2 days. So it's important, whether it's our mental health, our emotional health, or spiritual health, what is our daily cycle, so that we can figure out how is the best for us as an individual, and where we're at in life at that moment, which looks at all the phases of life too, to be able to engage, so that we can engage and feel that we are really part of life every minute of every day. And that means resting is part of life.
Absolutely. And along that line, I just read that scientists, actually, I'm listening to a podcast where a sleep expert has said that, and this, it's not sleep, but anyway, I've just heard if we take a 5-minute break, 2-minute break, even every half hour, we stay more refreshed and energized mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually throughout the day, and are ultimately more productive and more energized, less exhausted. So I'll take your hour and a half and shrink it to half.
And that it all depends. I use that because the reason why I use a larger time has to do with our conception and perception of if we aren't actively productive during at least that amount of time, then we are obviously not getting things done. Yours is that 30-minute is very accurate for science, but sometimes that's a bigger chunk. Even though it's a smaller time span, people feel like it's a bigger chunk to try to say, you mean I can't just force myself to do it for 2 to 3 hours straight? And here we have, as you're saying, science showing that you're more productive if you take those breaks every 30 minutes.
Right. And as long as you acknowledge, I mean, the person acknowledges, I am more productive, I have gotten more done in the course of the day, and I'm more refreshed, that then they will. I resisted the every 20-minute break. I said, no, I'm going to do mine in 90-minute breaks. But I was in a class and I said, so here's a cycle I did. The instructor had said, take a break every 30 minutes. And I said, no, that'll interrupt my train of thought and my productivity. No, I'll do it every 9.5. But for a week, I'll try it your way. And then I slipped back into my 90 minutes. I showed myself that 30-minute breaks was better. And some people do 5-minute breaks. I won't get into that, but if science is finding time and again that 30 minutes is the maximum we should work before we take a break and move. And it's not just take a break to sit and do something else. It is get up and move and breathe.
Well,
breathing's a cycle.
Yes, you're right. Breathing's an important cycle, and it's a cycle that we don't pay a whole lot of attention to because we feel it's automatic, and yet, and that's a concern not only with the breathing cycle, but with many of our cycles, like you were saying.
Yes,
activity cycle. We get them on automatic of what we do, and we don't look at them as cycles. And therefore, if it's a cycle and we recognize it, we can change, adapt, and improve upon it.
Well said. Yeah. Other cycles that I have paid attention to include my hobbies and interests. Through the years, those have cycled around.
Mhm.
I didn't own a car till I was 24. I walked and biked everywhere I went. And I'm back to doing more of the walking. So it's an interesting cycle. My creativity, which I'm very fond of having, comes in cycles, in spurts. And I've learned that if the house is really chaotic and messy, it sucks my energy and my creativity gets muffled. So if I put things away and clean up a little bit, my creativity blossoms. I like seeing that. So I find that to be an interesting cycle for me.
For me, yeah, if we look at hobbies and I think other interests, outside interest, is part about that it's an internal cycle also for who you are, and being able to realize that a tunnel vision, tunnel activity is not otherwise, so that our cycle happens to be on a plateau. And it's going through some changes. It's got the day and night, but as far as energy goes or involvement in many things like that, it's pretty, I don't want to say linear, but it's pretty consistent and constant. And part of the things about living life fully and long is that there's that variety and diversity. And that's where your hobbies and interests come in. And at times, okay, I'll read nothing but nonfiction. And then I'm losing it. I can't see for whatever the words are. I mean, literally, my mind says that's enough. And so then I read for strictly pleasure, and then I get involved in a book, and I forget that. Oh yes, I can go back and finish that other one now. So I think people do that also, but we do that in activities as well. As far as you're talking about the walking and the bicycling. We got work, and if we were in sedentary jobs, we've got athletes, then their focus and their energy and their physical activities can be very tunnel vision. And it's that balance of having diversity that facilitates activating different muscles. Now we're talking, that's real physical. It activates different parts of our brain. It activates different parts of our emotions. And spirituality, it'll bring us different experiences too. So being aware of having diversity and following our cycles and wondering, well, I'm out of kilter. You say, I worked too hard. I was going 90 minutes and I wasn't as productive. Or I'm the same way. My house is a clutter. I haven't taken time to clean it because I'm so focused on this other task. I'm doing myself more harm than good, because I haven't kept that balance going, that harmony going. And that's individual. That's individual. It's
Absolutely.
There isn't a pattern. There isn't a set pattern that's best for human beings. That's individual. But keep in mind that those hobbies and interests you had before, what they were creating and fulfilling and actually supporting within you. And if you feel something's missing, or you feel numb, or you feel lacklustrous, or you're out of kilter, it could be that you aren't including that variety in your cycles to be able to actually support and feed yourself.
I like that. And I like that you keep bringing balance into our conversation. Yes. And when we ride a bicycle, we have to keep our balance too. So cycles and balance do go well together.
It's important for us, I think, and we can look through and learn from looking at how was our childhood? How was our adolescence? How was when we can break the mid cycles down to the beginning of a career, the middle of our career, the end of our career, and then we're looking at, does the end of our career include, or is it a transition period to elderescence? That's an individual part. But looking at what the other cycles that were flowing through our life, because it's like having the different rhythms. And that you have those monitors in the hospital, and they've got 3 or 4 lines going on like this because they're monitoring 3 or 4 things, and all of that's going on simultaneously inside you. Well, we need to realize that we do have multiple cycles going on within us.
Absolutely.
that can all be a healthy function. We're looking at different peaks and valleys in each of those, and they're in harmony with each other. So that we
Well, we want them to be in harmony with each other.
Yes.
When they aren't, your
Right.
well-being is at risk here.
Yes.
And those are just the electrical impulses that the doctors are tracking. That's not the chemical cycles that are going on inside us, which are also important. One day we'll be able to track that too. We'll get a tricorder and we'll be able to read our chemical cycles and stuff too.
But the awareness of that too, though, as we're talking about, it's not only the chemical, it's not only the electrical, it's the emotional, it is the energy. All those cycles are going on into us, as well as our creativity, our joy, our sleep, which is about energy also, but we also need that as a different part of a cycle. So being aware of those things, our interests, what captures us and stimulates us. And we can have, again, different levels of need of stimulus. So there's no one answer for anybody. And Kit and I are each given examples of how it works for us. But that doesn't mean what you're doing is inappropriate for you as an individual either. But look at it so that you know. Yeah, you can wake up in the morning and go, not only I got an Howie, but I'm out of kilter today. I'm off. And however you define that, that's okay. But it's part of your cycle. So look at that cycle then, because that's a day in and day out. That's a 24-hour cycle. It may be a weekly cycle. It may be an annual cycle. Having goal setting time in January is a type of cycle. It's
good point. Yes. Yeah.
December is reflection and January is the new goal. So that's, again, a type of cycle that we do with our yearly things. And you can do it with that. If you have that kind of awareness, doing it on a daily basis can enhance your choices of living life fully and long.
Yeah. And I like your way of saying, pay attention to your balance with whatever choices you make in your life and how you blend your cycles. Because if you're out of balance, you're going to feel it in a variety of ways. And that's your key to writing it. I like that.
Yeah. We've talked about different things, and the key thing is we want to have an awareness. We want to be able to acknowledge that whatever the awareness is that we have, we want to acknowledge it, but then we want to take it to another step and actually recognize it. Otherwise, that means do the analytical thing to it. And the analytical thing can be just that we clearly identify for ourselves what that means for us. And then that means, do we need to celebrate? Do we need to adjust our pace? Do we need to fine tune a goal? Do we need to adjust? Do we need to adapt? Where are we at in a cycle? But being able to have that awareness, we have to be able to do that reflection, whether it's in December for a whole year or whether it's on a day to know, okay, today is not the day that I'm going to, it's just, I'm not there. So I'm not going to be able to do the 10K today. But I would really help. And this is just a physical example of changing things, but I could do 10 laps in the pool instead. And that changes actually which muscles you're using. It changes the physiological and emotional and spiritual experience of the event too. And you were totally productive.
Yeah. And some cycles we get in become ruts. And to see that we're in a negative cycle and to figure out how to break out of that is real valuable. So your point of awareness is something that I guess we all live better lives when we stay aware of what we're doing, be intentional. Or as I love to say, be engaged in your life, which means be intentional and aware and vibrant.
Yeah. I would look at each cycle. If we look at the childhood, the adolescence, midlife, and elderescence, each cycle has a different baseline. And make sure that we remember that it is a individual baseline. We also have cultural cycles, and we have economic cycles, which the feds are watching right now.
Political cycles, financial cycles, yeah.
Those are, but those things also change through our life cycles on how aware we are of them and what level we engage in them. So being aware of the external cycles as well as the internal cycles, and coming back to yours, engage with conscious, intentional choice allows us then to have that vibrancy, to be able to live, because we are, maybe it's content, maybe we're joyful, we have our frustrations, and we have our down times, but recognizing that those are part of the cycles of life and part of the cycles of that experience at that moment, we can then still make those intentional choices and engage in a way that would be our choice, our way of getting on with living life.
Or changing our life.
Yes. Well,
yeah, something that we've danced around that I think is important here is having gratitude for our lives and the elements of our lives. And maybe that's part of the reason I think celebration is important, because it does allow, it raises into our consciousness things to be grateful for. And when we learn to express those, I think that's good. I think that's important.
Well, I think gratitude, thankfulness, being okay with being mystified, odd, recognizing that you don't have complete control. And you also have others and other things, external, that are contributing or happening in the moment that you can be really, really thankful for. Something really simple. 2.5 hours in the park yesterday with a granddaughter. We decided that it was time because I had another commitment. So we went indoors. We walked indoors and it started pouring. That is, one of those things you go, timing, yes, thank you. That's a little tiny thing maybe, but really that was a great big thing to be thankful for. And yet it's something, no, that wasn't planned, wasn't controlled, but saying, hey, yeah, thankful for the rain and thankful for it waited for me. So taking time for that as part of your cycle. So putting it in your cycle of life is important, as you say, to bring that balance and harmony and blend of integration.
Your story reminds me of my Italian Camino. I was going to do 2 parts of it, walk from Rome to Assisi and then Florence to Assisi. Because I'm overweight and out of shape, and it was immensely harder than I was prepared for, I decided to end my pilgrimage early. I felt my knees and ankles were not strong enough to give me the balance I needed. I mean, my core's balanced too, but I felt that I could get hurt. And that it was the same feeling that I used to get when I was a skier. I'm tired, it's a good time to quit. So I quit early. I didn't do the second half. And on the way home, I heard, how torrential rains were flooding paths and rivers, pilgrims walking in knee-deep water. And I was grateful, like you and your granddaughter. I was so grateful that I had ended early because I did not have the strength to fight torrential rains and waters.
Right.
So I was grateful.
And that you were grateful, and yet at the same time, you celebrated what you did. There was
Absolutely
failure.
did,
It wasn't
yes.
incomplete. You
I
adjust.
did one half, and that's what I needed. And I can do the second half later. And I did celebrate. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
but
good.
I want people to remember too, then that wasn't a failure. That was
Thank
a
you for pointing
choice.
that.
That
You
was
weren't
a
talking to me, then
choice.
you're talking to the audience. Yeah, yeah. Yes, it was a choice. And any number of reasons. The fact that I did what I did and stopped and made the decision I did, that's all success. That is
Yes.
not failure. Yeah.
Yeah. And because how we deal with failure also affects our cycles, our daily cycle, our cycle of self-acceptance, our cycle of self-worth, because our cycle of self-doubt, our cycle of self-determination, depending on what words, but those are all cycles too. Those aren't straight uphill things, or straight downhill things. Those are a cycle. But being aware of those cycles and going, wait a minute, that wasn't the original plan. But by golly, what did happen was a major success, and I did it. And it was how I wanted to experience that. And I think that's what we need to realize too. Just because we adjust, adapt, change course, for whatever reason, don't complete the original outcome we desired. What did we achieve that was the real kernel of it? And you received the experience of that journey and that pilgrimage for you successfully, wholly, physically, mentally, and spiritually, and did it with that celebration, knowing that the second half of the trip could be done later. Well, if you choose to do it, it's on your list. Right. If you choose to do it, it may be
when it's time.
You move on to something different, going back to changes in hobbies, changes in pathways of life. That's what cycles are about. That's what engaging in life is about. And that also is what helps us stimulate ourselves to be able to have longevity.
Yeah. And I'm going to throw into that discussion we're having that forgiveness is an important component and an important element of our cycles. If we're too hard on ourselves, we don't forgive ourselves. We may blame others for something. And forgiveness releases us from the poison, I think, that comes along with blame and resentment and regret. So I think we can complete our cycles better, not only with gratitude, but with forgiveness also.
I would agree. Forgiveness is about knowing that blame and guilt are not necessary, and that life does happen. There's no such thing as perfectionism or everything being perfect. Look at Mother Nature. Mother Nature's beauty is in her inconsistency and little idiosyncrasies that are different.
Good point. Yeah.
And keep that in mind for ourselves too. So forgiveness, gratitude, awareness, and then being able to recognize it, acknowledge it, and celebrate it.
Well said. Yeah. Anything else that you want to cover? I mean, we could talk for hours. I'm looking at my notes. We've talked about pacing and scheduling your day, which is important in your life. An acknowledgement, and we touched on science. And the growth of, now I didn't talk about how the growth of knowledge and understanding kind of goes in cycles. When you hear about what people like Da Vinci, and I can't think of, all the people way back when came up with ideas, and sometimes they're new again. Airplanes weren't created in the early 1900s exclusively. They kind of keep cycling through, and the same with other wheeled vehicles. The creation of paints and artistic styles that artists use. There are lots of interesting cycles from times way back when.
And we can look at that. One of the things we were talking about when we look at science and things like that, also it has to do with our weather and things like that. We've seen that Mother Earth goes through cycles, and part of that is, of course, our circle around the sun. It also has to do with all of the creatures and the pathogens and the plants. And I said pathogens because this is important. Those can be helpful, and they can cause great death. But part of the death is part of life. So therefore we go that in those cycles that we're having, sometimes it's happened, and there's history of all these changes, and we've been able to monitor them, we've been able to read them and things like this. And we are still learning on what contributes to those changes, because nothing is in isolation. So the process that the sun, the tilt, the earth, the different animals, the different integrations of minerals and things like that on the earth, as well as us humans, what we're contributing with our changes and how we have changed how we live, contributes then not only to our individual changes, but the changes of our entire environment, which is the whole earth. And you build your big circles out. And so being aware of those changes, our knowledge then changes. So how we understand it, how we apply it as human beings change. Animals adapt. Why do we have coyotes living in downtown New York? Because there's
good food there.
That's right. Well, they've adapted. It wouldn't be their ideal. However, with their adaptations, now, if they were totally out in the forest, they could feel a sense of confusion. Being aware of that, we as humans, coming back to when you were saying we get into habit forms and ruts, we do that with the way we look at the world, with our sciences, how we look at each other, how we look at all the facets that we have involved in our day-to-day life too. So remembering that, and being able to open our eyes in both literal and figuratively speaking, so that we have the ability to process and adapt and change, and know what parts we have contributed to changes that make things more difficult for all. Whatever's growing on Earth, which means that will make complications for us as human beings, and living, all our animals and stuff like that. So we just need aware of that, and those changes go by. And all of us are contributing, meaning weather conditions, individuals, science, and things like that. But we can get tunnel vision and not take in all the factors and what impact it's having.
Yeah, our lives are not as simple and straightforward as a tree's. Trees drop their blossoms and their fruits and their leaves, and the fruit may grow into another tree. But in the meantime, the leaves and the blossoms are helping nurture the soil that the tree grows in. And it just does its thing. The sun shines, the moon shines, the rains fall, everything dries up, whatever. And it just goes on. Ben Franklin had a real interesting awareness when he was helping establish Philadelphia. he advised the city fathers that they have no fewer than 5 trees planted along the streets so that you wouldn't have the same tree next to each other. Because if you do have the same tree, it's monoculture, which is what we do so well right now, or do so much. But if you get a disease in the tree, it spreads to all the trees and then they're all dead and you have no tree. But if you have different trees interlaced, then yes, you may lose some trees, but not all. And I think that's an interesting cycle for us humans to pay attention to in our agricultural approaches, but even in our life. That I think if we create a cycle with different friends, different hobbies, different activities, that perhaps we have a more vibrant, more fuller, richer life like trees do.
And you'll also have fuller actual relationships, because the expectation that we can have is that one person can fulfill all our needs. And if the saying goes, it takes a village to raise a child, in that capacity, our life is always that. It takes a village for us to live fully.
Yes, it does. And COVID taught us that how badly we need community or a village to be healthier in many ways. Yeah.
And healthier, and then and also to be able to live longer, because that's part of that fuel.
Yes.
That's part. Food is a fuel. Water is a fuel. Relationships is part of the fuel we need to be able to have long lives.
Yeah. Along with the air and the sunshine, and yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Movement, all those things keep us going.
For sure.
Yeah. So, well, I have said everything I need to say today. Do you have more?
No, I think we've gone. We've talked about it in many ways. With one of the words that we have used is resilience, and the importance of it in a cycle, which means that we are able to come back from, or be able to continue on because of that resiliency. And you mentioned that really within the trees is that if they are spread out, not all in only one kind, then the resiliencies that those that aren't within the distance can continue living. And so we look at the resilience of life. And we talked about that relative also to when we were resting our energy, managing our phases. But we also look at the resiliency across careers or across lifespans, depending on what our experiences are, all the way from childhood to elderescence. Of we need to be able to adapt, adjust, learn, be resilient, be able to have a reserve to be able to apply when needed in whatever the situation may arise.
Yeah.
So gratitude.
Well done.
Yeah. Gratitude, forgiveness, cycles, thankfulness. I'm trying to go through the different words that we brought up today, because those are things people can think about when we talk about cycles of life.
And resilience.
And resilience, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, excellent. Do you have any articles or anything to offer people if they want to be in touch with you? Or do a website so they can get in touch with you if they want?
Yeah, the website is howtoinlife.com. How to in life, of course, is one word. And there's a variety of things on there on being able to, how to have awareness, be able to identify the void, being able then to develop skills and sets to move forward with it, and be able to express and connect oneself.
Good. And I will have your URL in the comments below and in in the YouTube description so that people can just click on that. But how to in life?
Correct.
Perfect. Okay. And again, I'm Cassingham with Live in Focused Energy. I work with people who want to create a better life. They want a smoother transition into elderhood. I want to inspire people to choose better life rather than just kind of floating along existing. I love it when I can help people transform their fear of aging. I have a YOS discovery session that I would love to offer people, and that is liveinfocusedenergy.com/why. When you know your why, it helps you make more conscious decisions and ride those cycles through your life with more vibrance and joy and purpose. So that's what I'll offer to people.
Excellent.
Next month's session is Live Your Dash, and that is the second Wednesday in July. Okay, let's look real quick. That makes it July 12th. So that's all for me for now. And please leave comments, ask questions, reach out to either Edith or myself if you want to explore any of this further.